This tutorial will continue working on adding structural elements, and the last tutorial ended where we added beams or girders to columns and walls. Keep in mind that the beams that we added in the last tutorial are going to be larger than the beams that we use for the beam systems, and that's because the beams and girders that span from column to column or column to wall are larger because they support the beam systems that span from beam to beam or girder to girder. So when we go to the Structure tab and the Beam Systems tab, it is going to have a system that is here, and it is going to have a beam type that is selected that you have loaded in already from the library that comes with Revit. So we want to go to our plan because that is the easiest way to do a sketch, which is what's required for beam systems. We do a sketch for beam systems because we are going from level to level with our systems. So it's a platform system similar to what we saw with wood framing. So we actually want to go to level 2 for structural, and you'll notice that the icon for the structural level versus the architectural level floor plans is slightly different. And we can now see the structural elements that we placed in the last tutorial. So we also have a beam direction option because we typically want our beams to span in the shortest direction when we have our beam systems. Since I did not have a specific dimension and these are relatively square bays that we have right now, I don't need to be very specific about that. But typically we want them to all go in the same direction unless there's a good reason for going in an opposite direction, which again might be a shorter span. So I'm not going to mess with that now, but you can go back and change it even after you've placed your beam system in your drawing. So now I want to do a sketch, and we need to consider that the beam systems are going to be sitting on these beams or girders. So ideally we want to go from the middle of one to the next. I'm done with that sketch, and now I want to look at it in 3D and make sure that I placed it properly. And here you can see that I didn't. I put it on the wrong level. So you see how my work plane is level 1 and I'm not allowed to change it, so I want to undo. Okay, well, I should be able to hit undo. There we go. And I want to go back to my level 2. And I want to try it again. So I go to Beam System, and you notice that my work plane here is level 2. I actually started this when I was in the 3D, so that is why it defaulted to level 1. Also, you notice that there's a fixed spacing. Our spacing, remember, for our beams is based on the span capability of the corrugated steel deck that we would put on top of those beams or open web joists. And that is for the structural system that is steel. This may not be here for other structural systems, but you need to make sure that you have that information as you're placing this into your Revit model if it's a structural system that requires it. In this instance, I'm going to change this to 3 feet so we can actually see the difference between what we had the last time I tried to do this. So I can do an automatic beam system or a sketch beam system. I like to sketch it, and so I'm going to go back and sketch it like I did last time. And notice I can actually see it this time because I put it on the correct work plane and it's telling me the size. So our structural plan could also be called a framing plan because it's giving us the information on the steel framing that is now being placed in this building information model. I can look at it in 3D and I can see the span of those, and you notice that while they're evenly spaced 3 feet, it's not necessarily 3 feet from the edge of where we sketch that system. So we also want to consider with the spacing of our beams the overall size of our span so that we don't necessarily have shorter spacing here. We can have that, but it's not as efficient. So we can also go back and we can edit that sketch if needed. So I hit escape twice to get out of the command, and then I want to select the system. Now you notice that I only selected the one element. If I want to select the system, I have to go to the outer edge where I sketched that system and select on it. And then I can edit my boundary, and then I can also edit the beam direction, which you notice the direction symbol is right here, and I can change it and pick a different direction. and it changed the direction of my system. It still kept that 3-foot spacing, but now it's spanning in a different direction. That is how you add beam systems. And in the last tutorial on structure, I'm going to go over how to add connection elements, which are detail items.